Welcome back to Zodiac Signs Lucky, the place where we don't just talk about horoscopes, we dive into the deeper truths hidden in the stars. Here, we mix astrology with psychology, sprinkle in a little wisdom from philosophy and even touch on the timeless lessons of Buddhist thought, all while keeping it down to earth and a little fun. In today's video, we're exploring something that's both fascinating and a little surprising, the 21 reasons why everyone secretly envies Cancer. Now, I know Cancer often gets mislabeled as the emotional one, the crybaby of the zodiac. But that's just the surface. The truth is, beneath that shell lies one of the most powerful, loyal, and magnetic personalities of all the signs. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why people admire them, envy them, and maybe even wish they could borrow a bit of their depth. Let's begin with a confession. If you've ever laughed at those internet memes calling Cancer the crybaby of the zodiac, you've missed the point entirely. That label is not only lazy, it's blind to the oceanic depth that defines this sign. Cancer is not just a bundle of tears, they are the tide itself, capable of serenity that heals and storms that awaken. Underneath their shifting moods lies treasure, loyalty that never wavers, empathy that could soften stone, and a memory so sharp it makes elephants look forgetful. I say this not as an amused observer but as someone who has spent decades peeling back the layers of astrology, psychology, and the dramas of human life. And each time I return to Cancer, I find myself quietly envying what they carry. Why? Because Cancers embody a kind of emotional intelligence that no classroom can teach. They can turn an ordinary dinner into a moment of sacred connection, they can make you feel seen when you didn't even know you were hiding, and yes, they can hold a grudge with the persistence of a monk counting beads, except this monk might also serve you homemade soup while silently remembering that one rude comment you made 3 years ago. It's infuriating and admirable all at once. If you are Cancer, you are among the chosen ones who remind the rest of us that strength does not always roar, sometimes it whispers, cooks, hugs, and forgives. And in this year of triumph 2025, perhaps the world finally understands that being sensitive isn't a weakness, it's the rarest form of power. People envy Cancer not because they are perfect, but because they dare to live and love with a courage most of us are still learning to find. When it comes to Cancer, their sensitivity is often misunderstood as fragility, when in truth it is more like a superpower. While most people spend their lives dodging feelings as if they were potholes on the highway, Cancer drives right through them and somehow finds treasure buried beneath the bumps. Their emotional range allows them to taste life in colors the rest of us can't even see. It hurts sometimes, sure, but it also means they spot beauty in the overlooked, the kindness in a stranger's smile, the sadness behind someone's forced laugh, the way a quiet evening meal can feel like a sacred ritual. It's what I call emotional high definition. And if you've ever longed for clarity in your own relationships, you can see why people envy it. Then there's the matter of trust. Cancer doesn't treat their inner world like an all-you-can-eat buffet at Costco where everyone gets a free sample. No, they guard it like a rare vintage wine, carefully choosing who gets a sip. To be invited into their inner circle is no small honor, it is a rite of passage. This mystery keeps others leaning in, curious, eager, and yes, sometimes a little jealous. Everyone wants to be on the list of the trusted ones, but only a handful ever get through the door. And when Cancer does love, it rarely needs words. A simple kiss from them feels less like a gesture and more like a contract written in sincerity. People often describe it as being handed their entire heart in one tender motion. That's the kind of love that lingers long after, authentic and profound. It's no wonder so many envy the way Cancer can turn something as simple as affection into a life-changing experience. When you talk about romance with a Cancer woman, you're not talking about the kind of love that's fueled by flashy Instagram gestures or empty promises. No, this is a woman who craves depth, something old-fashioned in the best way. Think roses placed on the kitchen counter, Handwritten notes slipped into your jacket pocket, late-night conversations that meander between dreams and fears. She wants to be courted, cherished, and adored, not with noise but with sincerity. And here's the thing, she inspires it. Men and women alike find themselves rising to the occasion around her, dusting off the best versions of themselves. People envy that she has this almost magnetic pull, where romance becomes not just a passing thrill but a living, breathing devotion. Now, don't mistake her softness for submission. Try telling Cancer what to do and you'll meet that iron spine hidden beneath the velvet exterior. There's a rebel streak in Cancer that refuses to be dictated to, whether it's by bosses, partners, or society itself. They carve their own path, guided by instinct, not by orders. This blend of gentleness and defiance makes them fascinating. Others secretly admire how Cancer can say no without raising their voice, as if their independence is carved into stone. And when it comes to loyalty, let's just say it's not for sale. Show up consistently, be honest, and prove you're reliable, and a Cancer will love you with a loyalty that feels almost ancient. In a world of swipe-right relationships and disposable connections, this is rare currency. People envy that their bonds run deep, not shallow. Finally, Cancer embodies a paradox the world craves. They can be deeply talented yet astonishingly humble. They'll light up a room with their abilities, then quickly step aside to let others shine. That balance, kindness without arrogance, power without ego, is enviable because so few ever master it. Cancer simply lives it. One of the most striking things about Cancer is their selflessness. Unlike the kind of generosity you see on social media, where people film themselves handing out sandwiches just to rack up likes, Cancer's giving nature is quiet, genuine, and deeply human. They will drop everything for a friend in need, even extend the same grace to a stranger on the street. It isn't charity with strings attached, it's compassion in motion. People envy this because in a world built on self-interest, Cancer reminds us that real kindness doesn't need an audience. It's almost Buddhist in nature, the idea that giving without expectation purifies the heart. Then there's their memory, which is both endearing and, frankly, terrifying. Cancer remembers everything. Not just birthdays or anniversaries, but the exact way you take your coffee, the sweater you wore on your first date, or the offhand comment you made 5 years ago about wanting to learn guitar. This elephant-like recall makes relationships with them feel significant because you know they're truly paying attention. But here's the flip side: if you wrong them, don't think time will erase it. Their heart is a fortress, it stores both warmth and warning signs. Which brings us to their hunger for freedom. For all their loyalty, Cancers are not here to live under anyone else's script. They need personal and emotional space like oxygen. If a job, relationship, or even a family tradition suffocates them, they will walk away, sometimes quietly, sometimes with dramatic flair worthy of a novel. People envy this courage, because most of us compromise endlessly just to fit in. Cancer shows us that boundaries are not walls, they're lifelines. And yes, betrayal. This is where Cancer's memory and self-protection collide. Forgiveness comes slowly, if it comes at all. Some will call it holding grudges, but from my years of study I see it differently. It's wisdom. Just as a monk learns not to touch fire twice, Cancer refuses to place their heart where it has already been burned. Others envy this conviction, even if they won't admit it, because deep down we all wish we had the strength to guard our souls as fiercely. What makes Cancer so uniquely enviable is their emotional conviction. When they feel strongly about something, it doesn't just fade away like yesterday's weather report. No, Cancer's beliefs and passions have staying power. They hold their ground, even if the world insists they just move on. In psychology, we might call it emotional tenacity. In spiritual terms, it's a kind of karmic backbone. And let's be honest, most of us bend too easily under pressure. Cancer, on the other hand, reminds us that there's dignity in standing firm, even if it's unpopular. Some call it stubbornness, I call it wisdom wrapped in loyalty. Now, about those moods. Cancer is ruled by the moon, and just like the moon, their personality waxes and wanes. One moment they're cracking jokes and filling the room with laughter, the next they're staring out the window like a novelist contemplating the meaning of existence. You never quite know which Cancer you're going to get, and that unpredictability is magnetic. Others envy it because while most of us are predictable to the point of boredom, Cancer's shifting tides keep life interesting. They remind us that to be fully human is to feel the full spectrum. Then there's their charm. Cancer rarely stomps their foot and demands what they want. Instead, they work their magic with tenderness, subtlety, and just enough sweetness to make you want to hand it over. It's sneaky, yes, but in the most adorable way. Picture a child asking for dessert with wide eyes. You know exactly what they're doing, but you give in anyway. That's Cancer in adulthood. And people envy that ability to turn affection into influence. Above all, family is sacred ground for Cancer. They'll sacrifice, fight, and nurture with a devotion that borders on heroic. In a society that often feels fractured, their fierce loyalty to blood and chosen family alike stands out. People envy the emotional security Cancer builds, homes where love is defended like a fortress and nurtured like a garden. If you've ever longed for belonging, that's why Cancer inspires both admiration and quiet envy. They remind us what it feels like to be safe, loved, and truly at home. One of the most enviable qualities of Cancer is that they refuse to waste time with shallow love. They don't do situationships, they don't do half-hearted texting games, and they certainly don't waste energy on people who only want a highlight reel version of them. Cancer insists on being fully seen, fully understood, and fully accepted, messy moods and all. This demand for depth is intimidating to some, but to those who rise to the challenge, the reward is a relationship that feels like poetry in motion. People envy this because most of us settle far too easily for being half seen, half loved, half valued. Cancer reminds us that intimacy without authenticity is just performance. And here's where the paradox begins. For a sign so emotional, Cancer has an uncanny knack for cultivating tranquility. Think of them as the friend who will light a candle, cook a warm meal, and somehow turn your chaotic Tuesday into a retreat. Their homes often feel like sanctuaries, places where you can finally exhale. This isn't an accident, it's the result of their spiritual instinct to create balance in the storm. I've often said that being around a grounded Cancer is like stumbling into a Zen garden. You walk in frazzled and leave wondering if you should take up meditation. People envy this because, in a noisy world, Cancer provides silence that heals. But perhaps their most magnetic trait is their fearlessness in love. While many people guard their hearts like Fort Knox, Cancer opens theirs willingly, knowing full well heartbreak is part of the bargain. They'd rather dive in and risk drowning than spend their life watching from the shore. That kind of courage is rare. It's the courage of someone who knows that regret stings more than rejection. Others envy this boldness, even as they secretly cling to their safety nets. Cancer shows us that love, like life, is meant to be risked. And maybe that's their greatest lesson. The heart isn't meant to be hidden, it's meant to leap, stumble, and triumph, sometimes all in the same day. If there's one thing Cancer does better than most, it's creating tribes rather than just amassing contacts. In a culture obsessed with how many friends you can rack up on social media, Cancer quietly curates something much richer: community. Their circles are tight, intimate, and built on loyalty rather than convenience. To be invited into a Cancer's world is to feel like family even if you are not related by blood. This is why people envy them. While others juggle 100 shallow connections, Cancer is busy building bonds that could survive a power outage, a financial crisis, or even just a long, rainy Sunday afternoon. They don't want fans, they want kin. And in that, they remind us of something sociology has taught for centuries: true belonging doesn't come from numbers, it comes from depth. Now, as warm as Cancer can be, they are also fiercely protective of their peace. If someone in their orbit is consistently toxic, always complaining, always taking, or worse, always betraying, that person won't last long. Cancer has an internal alarm system that rings the moment negativity overstays its welcome. And when it does, they don't hesitate to cut ties. Some call this cold, I call it enlightened self-preservation. Think of it like pruning a tree. You cut off the dead branches so the whole garden can thrive. People envy this skill, because most of us linger too long in poisonous company, afraid of looking rude. Cancer shows us that boundaries are not cruelty, they are compassion directed inward. And then, of course, comes their secret weapon, food. When Cancer sets a plate before you, it's not just dinner, it's therapy disguised as mashed potatoes or a warm bowl of soup. Their meals carry nostalgia, care, and comfort all in one bite. It's no exaggeration to say being fed by a Cancer feels like being hugged from the inside out. That's enviable, too, because it's not just about cooking, it's about the intention behind it. Food becomes a love language, a way of saying, "You're safe here." In a world starved for authentic connection, Cancer's kitchen becomes a temple, and their table a sanctuary. And if you've ever been lucky enough to sit at that table, you know why everyone envies them. When we bring it all together, the reason people secretly envy Cancer becomes strikingly clear. They embody what the rest of us are constantly chasing but rarely manage to live: authenticity that isn't for sale, loyalty that doesn't crack under pressure, emotional depth that makes life feel alive, the freedom to walk their own path, and a fearlessness in love that would make a novelist jealous. Of course, they're not perfect, no sign is. But here's the secret: what we often label as their flaws are just the shadows of their greatest strengths. Their moods? That's the price of feeling everything in high definition. Their protectiveness? That's what makes their love unshakable. If you're Cancer, hear me well, the world sees you more than you realize. You are not too emotional, you are profound. You are not too sensitive, you are wise enough to notice what others miss. And in this year of triumph 2025, your gifts are shining brighter than ever. People might not always admit it, but they envy your ability to live from the heart, to build homes of peace, and to love with a devotion that's rare in our age of distractions. You don't need to force yourself into the world's noisy molds. Your power lies in being exactly who you are. And if you're not Cancer, maybe this is your invitation to borrow a page from their book. Feel a little deeper. Love a little harder. Walk away from the negativity that robs your light. Because the truth is, the chosen ones aren't limited to one zodiac sign. They're anyone who has the courage to live with the kind of open-hearted strength that Cancer embodies every single day. So, dear Cancer, enjoy your life. Don't get tangled in the petty noise around you. Keep nurturing, keep laughing, keep being the calm in the storm, because the world needs exactly that. And to all of you watching, if you found wisdom here, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who could use a little Cancerian magic, and subscribe to our channel, Wisdom of Zodiac Signs. The stars always have more to teach us, and together, we'll keep uncovering their truth.